Hey everybody, this is Bill. Welcome to the channel and welcome to the Color and Pageantry, our section of our channel that we devote to college football, where this week we're going to present our Week 13 Top 25. We're also going to take a look at last week's rankings, who fell out, and who is now looking to get into this week's rankings, teams that are on the cusp of being ranked in the top 25. In addition, we'll review who's hot and who's not. But before we get to all that, let's jump in the rabbit hole again like we did last week and take a little look at the coaching silly season. Okay, over on Twitter, CFB Home, we follow them. They've got a nice looking little list here of what's been filled and what hasn't. 3 major jobs have been filled. Auburn has picked up Hugh Freeze from Liberty. Now, Hugh Freeze won pretty well at Ole Miss. Got into some trouble there, has refurbished himself and his crew over there at Liberty, done a fantastic job. He's over at Auburn. We're going to keep our eyes on that. He's one of only a couple of people, I think Lane Kiffin might be the other, who's actually got some wins over Nick Saban. So we think Freeze has an opportunity to do really, really well over there at Auburn. Now, Luke Fickell, a former Ohio State All-America player. He's a stellar coach. He's very familiar with the Big Ten. He left Cincinnati. The Bearcats had them in the playoff last year. He's taken over at Wisconsin. Now, we think he's going to do fine there. He's an excellent football coach. But there is a potential problem, as most expected the Badgers to go with former Badger player and interim coach Jim Leonhard. There are a slew of hurt feelings over there with the Badgers that they went another direction. And some feel that a level of trust was broken. So we need to see how all this works out. But we got confidence that Fickell will get it done. But unlike over at Nebraska, who just went through a coaching search, the Wisconsin people never really seemed to express their intention to engage in a national search. So that left a lot of the Leonhard backers really with some hurt feelings. So we'll see how that goes. I think ultimately down the road, Fickell will be great. Now over at Nebraska, Matt Rule is in. Rule, who had successful rebuilding stints at Temple and Baylor, comes to Lincoln via getting fired from the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. Now, there have been plenty of successful college football coaches who have tried and failed in the NFL, including names like Steve Spurrier and Nick Saban. But Rule seems the perfect type of guy Nebraska needs to get back on track. There were some stumbling blocks in getting Rule signed. In fact, we thought they were going to have to go a different direction. Issues on future income streams, how that was going to be divvied up with the Carolina Panthers were right at hand there. But Trace Armstrong and his group from the search firm did a great job in getting all these handled, along with Nebraska AD Trev Alberts. And Alberts was able to conclude this search, and he got a really good one in our opinion. So we look for Rule to do well and Fickell to do well. Now, David Shaw is out at Stanford. We do remain puzzled on how the situation on the farm deteriorated so badly. We don't have any doubt in our mind that David Shaw is a fantastic football coach. Don't know what his future holds. He's done some TV for the national championship game, so we'll see what happens there. Shaw, a great coach. Don't know what Stanford's going to do. They do have some restrictions, in who they can get in there, so have to keep our eyes on that. Arizona State has indeed landed Oregon offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham. We think this is an outstanding hire for the Sun Devils. Obviously, he's going to need some time to get things going over there, but this could be a really hidden gem that works out really well for them. Now, Deion Sanders has confirmed he has been offered the Colorado job. So we'll have to see what happens there. Deion, we think, is just an influx of energy anywhere he would land. So we really want to keep our eyes open on primetime. And we do want to note that with the Bearcats open up there in Cincinnati, one has to wonder if Urban Meyer might be interested in that job. He's from that area. He might want a lower key situation if he were to get back involved. So we want to keep our eyes on that. Now, some of these coaches like Jim Leonhard we're talking about and Mickey Joseph at Nebraska, they might end up at some of these jobs that you're looking at that aren't full. Tulsa, Liberty, USF. Could Deion land down there? There seems to be some rumblings about that. But we're going to keep our eye open on these jobs. These are some very interesting jobs. There's some fantastic younger coaches that could end up in these spots, turning maybe one of these teams into something really special. You see Florida Atlantic on the list. Willie Taggart was let go, the former Florida State and Oregon coach. He did exceptionally well at Western Kentucky and at UCF. in the non-Power 5 there, so Taggart might land somewhere in there too. And on our last coaching note, it looks like Georgia Tech is working on a deal to promote Brent Key to be their head coach. Now, he's a former player for Georgia Tech. They performed quite well underneath him. They scored some big upsets. I believe they beat Pittsburgh. They really played well in a couple of games under Key. So interesting to see. Like I say, he's a former player. So I think that might be a good move. I liked Dion there, but if they can't get that done, maybe Jamie Chadwell. But this Key, he might be the right Key for Georgia Tech. Let's move on to the top 25. Okay, folks, so getting over to the top 25, we had 3 teams fall out of the top 25 from last week. Coastal Carolina, they were 23rd. They got bombed at James Madison, 47-7. I know they've got their quarterback hurt, but they're out of the top 25. Cincinnati, they just were passed by some teams we felt had scored some big wins. Nothing wrong with Cincinnati. They're right in there. And Iowa was 25th. They took a home loss to Nebraska. Wow, that was a tough one because Iowa would have been in the Big Ten championship game if they'd have won the ball game, but they did not. Now, looking at who's trying to get in there, there's Purdue. Purdue did win the Big Ten West, and they're going to be in the championship game against Michigan. Illinois, a fine season with Brett Bielema. They kind of stumbled down the stretch there, but they had a great year, the Illini. Look out now. Cincinnati, who we just talked about. University of Texas, San Antonio, had a great season down there. UCF is a pretty good football team. They slip up a little bit on themselves, but they're pretty good. They're going to be playing Tulane this week. Pittsburgh with a big win over Duke. We still like Duke. What a fantastic year they had under their first-year head coach. Boise State is their Wake Forest. They fell down the stretch, kind of surprising. Lost some games they probably shouldn't have, but they're in our also mentioned here. Baylor, not a great season for them, but they're a pretty good football team. Texas Tech, under their coach, he's big down there in Texas, and they scored a huge win late night against Oklahoma in overtime. I don't know who saw that. That was a fantastic game. Texas Tech with a big win. They'll be bowling in a pretty decent game. Minnesota, they're a pretty good football team. They can run the football. Fresno State has reeled off some wins now, and they're going to be playing in their championship game this weekend. We've got our eye on them. Kentucky, they're a decent team. Florida, they played very well at Florida State. I was at that ball game. They were in it. They were in it. They got some skilled people. They can do some things, but they can also mess themselves up. But Florida, they're worth looking at there too. We have been very impressed with Washington State this year. They were tied pretty much with Washington at the half, but they kind of got it taken to them in the second half. But a great season for Washington State. And Maryland, they started out a little shaky, but they've had some good games here recently, so we like what we see from Maryland. So that's who fell out and who's looking to get in and who's hanging on as we hit the very last season or weekend of the season, the championship games, before we all, some of us, go bowling. Okay, let's get a look at our top 25. North Carolina comes in at 25th. They've lost 2 in a row. That included a game at home to their rival NC State, who comes in at 24. NC State, we thought, was going to have a great season this year. They stumbled against Clemson early. Then they got their quarterback hurt. But they've managed to get to 8-4. They'll be bowling. Still a pretty good season for the Wolfpack. Ole Miss, they lost the Egg Bowl to Mississippi State at home. That was a tough one. Lane Kiffin may have been looking around at other jobs. We don't know, but he's staying at Ole Miss. But they're 8-4. They're 23rd. Mississippi State, who got that win in the Egg Bowl, they're a decent football team, man. When they've got it going, they're a problem. They're 22nd. Tulane, 21st. Willie Fritz, he's sticking around down at Tulane. They're decent, 10-2. They're 21st. South Carolina is 20th. Now, not only did they lay waste to Tennessee a week or two ago, they went to Clemson and snapped Clemson's home winning streak. Big win for South Carolina and Shane Beamer. South Carolina comes in at 20th, 8-4. Great season for them. If you look at who they've lost to in their losses, pretty impressive. Texas is 19th at 8-4. Notre Dame, they went out to Los Angeles and lost to Southern Cal. Boy, Southern Cal, we knew they were great on offense, but they look really tough on defense against the Irish. They pulled off the win there. Notre Dame is 18th. UCLA is 17th. Oregon lost at Oregon State. They're 16th. Oregon State with that win ahead of Oregon. Both are 9-3. We've got Oregon State, the Beavers. We had them coming into the season to have a pretty good season. Didn't know we were going to have them at 15th in the country, but we had them having a good season. Oregon State, the Beavers, they're a good football team. LSU, a disappointing loss to Texas A&M. They fall all the way to 14th. They're no longer in playoff consideration. Florida State is 13th. The Seminoles, man, they were in a tight ball game with the Florida Gators in Tallahassee. They did come out ahead, but they had to sweat it out. But Jordan Travis was the difference. He is playing some fantastic football for FSU. Utah is 12th at 9-3. They're going to be in the Pac-12 championship game against Southern Cal, who they beat earlier by 1 point on a 2-point conversion in a fantastic game. I don't know anybody saw. Us Pac-12 after dark people, we saw it, but much of the country probably didn't. Kansas State, they're in the Big 12 championship game. Fantastic season for Chris Kleiman over there with the Wildcats. They're 9-3. They could upset TCU. They're a doggone good football team. Kansas State, keep your eye on that. That's going to be noon on Saturday. Clemson falls to 10th. Can't see how they make the playoff. I don't think they deserve to be in the playoff, but they are 10-2. They're ranked 10th. Now we get to the top 10 here with Washington. The Huskies under Kalen DeBoer. What a fantastic season. They are really good, 10-2. They're ranked 9th. Penn State is 8th at 10-2. They had a good year. Now, they were beating both Michigan and Ohio State at the half, I believe, if I'm correct on that, but they didn't pull those out. But a great season for James Franklin and Penn State. They're better this year than we thought they were going to be, so we got to tip our hat to Penn State. Now, Tennessee, they rebounded off their South Carolina loss and just handed it to Vanderbilt in Nashville. I think a lot of people picked Vanderbilt to win that game, and boy, did Tennessee serve some notice there. So they're looking good. We have them at 7th. We have Alabama at 6th at 10-2. Alabama's got 2 very thin losses. Now, they could have lost some other games that they won, but they won those games. We got Alabama 10-2. They won the Iron Bowl against Auburn. Now we get to the top 5. Ohio State. Now, we had Ohio State beating Michigan, but we did have Michigan covering. But boy, we did not see the explosiveness that Michigan put on display offensively. So that really surprised us. Ohio State didn't seem to be able to do anything to stop it, which also surprised us. So Ohio State has now fallen to 5th. I guess there's a chance they could get back in it if Southern Cal or TCU, if somebody got beat. But right now, we just don't see it. They're 5th, 11-1. Southern Cal, the big victory over Notre Dame we mentioned. What a great season. Their only loss by 1 point to Utah, as we mentioned. They've got Utah again. If they revenge that loss, put Southern Cal in the playoff. Texas Christian, fantastic. What a wonderful season for the Horned Frogs. 12-0. Kansas State, that's going to be a tough one. Michigan rolled Ohio State. Man, what big plays were on display for the Wolverines. Did not see that coming. They were limping into the... Ohio State was limping into it too, but so was Michigan. I mean, Michigan barely got by Illinois. They're in their big victory over Ohio State at Ohio State. So Michigan, right in there at number 2. And number 1 remains for us and for most everyone else, the Georgia Bulldogs. They were in a little tussle early with Georgia Tech, who's been playing some decent football here lately. But they took care of their own business, got Georgia Tech handled. Georgia, they're looking really good, 12-0. Now, they've got a tough LSU team. When LSU wants to play, they can really, really be tough. So we're going to have our eyes on that. That's 3:30 Saturday, but we expect Georgia to take care of business and to get on in the playoff. So that's our top 25 for this week. The Georgia Bulldogs remain number 1. Okay, so who's hot? This week we got Florida State. Now, after Jimbo Fisher put his Christmas tree out by the road and bolted FSU for Texas A&M, the Seminoles began listing in some rough seas, searching for port after a poor hire and 2 horrific seasons under Willie Taggart. This led to the arrival of Mike Norvell. Now, there were some serious missteps early, losing to Jacksonville State at home leading the game the entire time. In fact, leading when it was 0, but gave up a long touchdown pass to lose the. These were not good. But Norvell has really righted that ship now. He has established positives across the spectrum, except wins until this season. And now, with the culture shifted, the team believing, and some athleticism on this team now, the wins are starting to come. Now, they did get a big win over LSU in the opener, and a come-from-behind victory at Louisville with their quarterback Jordan Travis on the bench. They came back and won that game. Now, they did lose 3 in a row. Wake Forest at home, at NC State, and versus Clemson at home. But since then, they've been blowing people out. They disposed of the Gators. They finished 9-3, and they're right on the edge of the top 10. Now, if the Seminoles could get a bowl win, they might be in there by the season's end, and this would be remarkable. Now, Coach Norvell has had his team accountable this season. They take pride in the discipline, the responsibility, hard work, and teamwork that's necessary to win. This is showing up in droves now. So for that, he deserves a lot of credit, and the FSU Seminoles might want to give him a pay raise because I got a feeling some other teams are going to be looking for him. Norvell, great job over the past 3 years. Tip of the cap to you. Really fantastic. The future looking really bright in Tallahassee, Florida. So who is not hot? We're going to go with the Clones, the Iowa State. Now, last season, Coach Matt Campbell, who had been a highly sought-after coach, had his Iowa State Cyclones a veteran team that was in the preseason top 10. Now, after early loss to rival Iowa, that set the Clones off on the wrong foot, and the season was an overall disappointment to be sure. They really had aspirations of a top 10 finish. Now, this season, with the expectations more reasonable, Iowa State jumped off 3-0. That included beating Iowa for the first time in who even know? I think it was like 8 years or something like that. So that was a big, now everybody's on Iowa State. And then, boy, they have lost 8 of their last 9. Now, many of these were close losses, but the dam broke at TCU this weekend. The Clones were throttled 62-14. So mercifully, this disappointing season is over. And the residual may have tarnished Campbell. Maybe teams aren't going to be coming after him like they once were. But that might work perfectly for Iowa State, because we know Campbell's a pretty good football coach, and Iowa State will likely be more than willing and now able to do so in terms of keeping him around. So a bad season for Iowa State might end up being a good thing. Okay, folks, we would love to hear your comments, your thoughts on our ranking. Do drop us some comments. Let us know what you're thinking. If you see eye to eye with us on something, or if we got something wrong, let us know. Keep us informed there. We'd love to hear from you. You can follow us on Facebook at The Color and Pageantry. Now, if you enjoyed the video, we do invite you to like the video. Subscribe to our page if you want to see more like this. We've also got stock information. We talk real estate. We do a lot of things, but we do the college football. So if you like that, stick with us now. We do want to thank you very much for watching. That's a big thing. We really appreciate it. Now, the championship games are not the colossal collisions we're usually expecting, but on any given Saturday, anything can happen. So we're going to have our eyes open on that. We'll keep you informed. We're going to see you next week. And listen, we're going to have bowl predictions coming up soon. So let's be on the lookout for that. That's going to be fun. We're going to predict all the bowl games. You could take that to your Christmas tree, your company Christmas party. When you get your sheet, pick the winners. Boy, we might be able to help you. See you next week.